Hello, YouTube. I'm your host, Lisan Faye, and thank you all for joining me for my retrospective video on Mass Effect 3 and the entire Mass Effect series. So, just to kind of give you a quick overview, I am primarily going to talk about Mass Effect 3 and my thoughts regarding it. For this video, because with Mass Effect 1 and 2, I already kind of given a lot of my opinions on them in their final videos for their series. So I'm primarily going to talk about Mass Effect 3, but there are some things regarding the whole series that I did want to talk about. And yeah, so let's go ahead and dive into it. Alright, so some of the things that I really liked in Mass Effect 3. One, getting to revisit all the amazing characters that we've had from the previous two games, even if they're not necessarily like permanent fixtures, like say Tali and Garrus, but instead have more episodic moments, like say Miranda and Jack. It was really nice to be able to see them again. And it kind of actually, I think, really helped pull every little aspect together, and like getting to see the full team come together. So I really liked that. And then actually getting to interact with all the different races, all the different alien races, and feeling like Shepard was actually having an impact on them. Because in the previous two, you had your three council races from Mass Effect 1, the Turians, the Asari, and the Solarians, and yet even though they were supposed to be like these big overarching bodies in terms of like just sheer amount of species growth, you didn't really get to interact with them all that much. It's like, yeah, sure, you had Garrus, you had Liara, but you really didn't, and Samara, and Mordin for a little bit. But even then, like, it didn't really seem like you were interacting with their specific race. And it was really cool to actually now get to see how those cultures actually do have influences on those characters that I mentioned, and also to feel like you've been able to contribute to their species' growth and ability. And we'd previously really only had that with, well, really the Krogan and a little bit of the Quarians. But primarily it was humans that were the primary interaction. So it was really nice to actually get to interact with all of these different alien races. Also, one of the things I liked is the creation of emotion that Mass Effect 3 had. It utilized music really, really well. It utilized characters really well in order to help things along. And the voice actors, all of them, did a really, really good job. So it just, yeah, as you've obviously seen, I went through an emotional roller coaster playing this game, and I'm happy I have played it. Like, really, really happy. about the fact that I've played Mass Effect 3 now. And yeah, definitely gonna play it again. So other things that I did like, I liked seeing Shepard's character growth. I liked seeing other characters' character growth across the series, and I'm gonna address some of those a little more specifically when I get to the characters. But it's nice to actually see a full arc there. So, and then some of the things that were very specific to not Mass Effect 1. So for 2 and 3, one of the things I liked was having the fish. And I really liked the fact that in Mass Effect 3, you still got to have fish. And I am aware now, after I've finished playing, that if I had had dinner with Kelly in Mass Effect 2, then she would have given me back my fish from Mass Effect 2. But I never had dinner with her, so therefore I never got to run into her in the Citadel. Which I know a lot of people were just like, you haven't found Kelly yet! Oh no! When I got to that sequence. But the thing is that because I never had dinner with her, she wasn't there. So in a way you can think of the idea that she lived anyways. She just stayed hidden better. But for Mass Effect 3, like, really specifically, I loved how alive the ship is. And I know I know I've talked about this in the episodes. Everyone who's commented on it has said how much they love it as well. And I really agree. Being able to have your companions not stay in the same spot, and instead move about, interact with each other, debate with each other, develop feelings for each other, as it turns out. So, like, I'm really, really, really glad that that was in this game, because it was an element that was missing from the first two. And, I mean, you didn't quite realize it was missing, but now that it's here in the third game, it's like, oh my gosh, I really wish this had been here the whole time. As annoying as it would have been to have to go and search through every single room to find someone. And then, finally, my favorite thing, my favorite mechanic, probably of this whole game. And if you didn't see this coming, then you clearly did not watch my Let's Play closely enough. But my favorite thing of the things I liked in this game: headshots. Especially through the mail slot. Oh my gosh, those were so satisfying. And like, I am not a typical first-person shooter gamer. Like, it's just not my kind of thing, generally speaking. But I found that just so satisfying. So yeah, there aren't words to fully explain how happy every time I made a headshot made me. Alright, so the things I didn't like. One, how mapping works. For example, there were definitely several instances where I would be going along on a mission and then kind of hit a wall, and it really was not obvious that there was a ladder that was hidden that I was supposed to climb up. So that got to be really, really frustrating, to say the least. And like, there were multiple instances of that. There were times where it really wasn't obvious. Well, am I supposed to go left? Am I supposed to go right? And it just, I appreciate, like, non-linearity, but at the same time, some of the issues on the maps that you play in and that I played in, they just don't... they just don't work for me. One of the other things, and this is kind of a mechanical thing, and I don't know if it's a... what's the phrase? Maybe it's a programming bug, but the fact that there was a disconnect sometimes between messages that Shepard would receive and conversations that she would have with other characters. This happened a couple of times. I think really the most prominent time this happened was when I had talked to Caden and we agreed to meet at Apollo's on the Citadel, and we went and we had our date, and then several episodes later I finally get a message from him saying, "Hey, I found a great steak place on the Citadel, we should go." And that was actually supposed to apparently arrive before we went on our date. So the fact that those things exist are a little frustrating, but at the same time, it is such a massive game. Some bugs are going to happen, and I'm not going to completely fault it. Alright. Now, this next one is character that I just did not like, and probably is no surprise to be on this list, is Kai Lang. I didn't really see the point of introducing him for this final game. And giving him a specific name and everything. I kind of wish that there was either someone pre-existing or who had been referenced in Mass Effect 2 who took on that role instead. I think that would have been a little more powerful versus this guy who only appears for the first time in the books, and I didn't finish Deception before playing Mass Effect 3. I still haven't finished it. But, if you don't read them, you have no idea who he is. There's no real connection to him on, okay, great, he just happens to be a named bad guy. And, so I didn't really like him for those reasons. I mean, sure, yes, I despise his character for absolutely other reasons because he's an asshole. But, I didn't like him in terms of the gameplay because there isn't that build up to him the way that there is build up to these other aspects that you see. So, really didn't like that. And then the story plot point I really didn't like was the fact that Anderson died. Of everyone who I wanted to have live at the end of Mass Effect 3, Anderson was probably the person I wanted to have live the most. Because I felt like he deserved it. But yeah, that's personal to me. And yeah, I know it seemed a little foreshadowed, but I was really, really hoping that Anderson would survive and would be able to have a life with Kaylee after everything. But speaking of other moments that really did help make the game for me, the first one on this list you should have expected a long time coming, but it is Rex dropping down on the car that supposed to belong to Seasuck, but is full of assassins there to kill Shepard, and he just drops onto it and takes out everyone in there. Oh, you've got to be shitting me. Rex! 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 Forcibly ejecting them. Rex! And it is just such a moment, and I love it. Yeah, like, and I know I mentioned in my recordings, I literally had to stop playing for a little bit because I was too excited about, like, everything that had happened there. So, another one of my favorite moments in the game was getting to kill Kai Lang. And it wasn't for the fact that he's an asshole and, yeah, absolutely we should have killed him in this game. It was for the fact of that I took that Renegade Interrupt and the phrase of, "This is for Thane, you son of a bitch." And I'm like, that was so good.
That was for Thane, you son of a bitch.
Yes! Yes! Oh! And I know several of you have mentioned how that interrupt kind of changes depending upon what was available, and it just, oh man. Like, that was a moment. Other things that I really loved. Tali being a sass queen to Garrus.
Okay, toughest mission.
Horizon.
No fair, I hadn't joined up with you yet.
Fine, the Dead Reaper then.
Really? The husks just ran up to us.
Have you ever noticed that I carry a sniper rifle? You're the one who likes things at short range.
And you prefer to keep everything at a distance.
Exactly. Wait, what?
The previous thing we fought.
The Thorian. But wait, what did you mean?
I didn't mean anything. I'm going with the Rachni.
The Queen? But we didn't fight her either time.
No, the little ones. They look like spiders and they scuttle right toward you.
I thought you liked it when things got up close and personal.
I guess it depends on who it is.
Like, yeah, Tali's always had that sass in her, and actually seeing her turn it on to other people who she's supposed to be friends with is, I think, like, some of my favorite things that I've seen regarding her dialogue. So, oh, Tali, I love you. So for the final moment that I'm going to list amongst my favorite moments is Grunt being very drunk in the shower and talking about fish dog food snacks. Yee. No.
What's that, Grunt?
Give me more. Fish dog food snack.
And, like, a huge reason why I've loved that so much and why I put that up with my favorite moments is just like, Grunt's supposedly fully grown, but at the same time you kind of watch him go through puberty in Mass Effect 2, and like, even though he was tank-born and everything, like, there's still some aspects that he's just a kid for. And, like, seeing moments like that where it kind of reflects the whole, yeah, sure, he can kill anything that you put in front of him pretty much. But then, like, you know, just his moments of calm and just hilarity, I guess. And really, even though I say the fish dog food snacks in particular, like that whole sequence where he's just lying there in the shower being very drunk. Alright, so time to talk about characters. So I'm going to start with the squad, and I'm going to go in order from when, like, I'll talk about them in the order in which they were permanently put on the team. So, first teammate who is permanently part of Shepard's squad was James. And I did really like James. I thought he was amusing. I love the fact that he has his nicknames for everyone. For fighting purposes, he was a great tank for me. And I thought, like, I really liked him. And I'm not sure how to phrase all of those words together. And I also think for a single game, for a character who's only introduced for this one game, he had amazing character growth. And just watching him go from where he is as the angry, slightly bitter Marine at the start, all the way to like agreeing to do the N7 program and like having more confidence in himself at the end of the game. I think it's just such a great transition, going from one to the other. And it was always a lot of fun to see him when he would actually talk to me and like get those sort of bro moments that you do tend to see in a lot of military relationships, is that there is someone who's like, yep, nope, you're the one who says the funny things. Like when Anderson, in Anderson's own documentary, Anderson mentioned how he had to lighten up everyone's spirits, and he like felt the need to do that. And James kind of does that for this group, and so I have a lot of appreciation for him. So our next squad member was Liara, who, yeah, really good biotic. Maybe a little too on the squishy end for me, but I also preferred having her on the Normandy compared to in the field, from a story perspective, in that she is the shadow broker, and I feel like she's better utilized at gathering information versus fighting in the field. But I do think in this game, she has some of the sweetest moments in this game, for her friendship. And like the time capsule, the like the piano scene, it was really nice. And like it gave you a moment to be really connected to her. But that being said, I think the whole, like, her personality sometimes feels a little strangely balanced to me. And I know this is entirely my own personal opinion. That's the thing regarding all of this. This is my own opinion and not anyone else's. But, like, I know that for Dasari, she's actually relatively young, but she's also still supposed to be way older than pretty much anyone on the ship. And, so seeing her where she's having her moments where she's more teenage-like, her moments where she's more mature, her moments where she's trying to be calm, collected Zen master, and then the moments where she's trying to be the badass shadow broker. I don't know if that always balanced well for me. So I'm gonna leave that one there. I still like her. So that's, I guess, the main takeaway, is even though I felt like the personality was a little strangely balanced in this game, I still really liked Liara. So, team member number 3, Garrus. Which, Garrus, I think, actually provides the best references back to the previous 2 games. He's another one of those, characters where you get a lot of bro moments with him. And so, like, I'm glad you also get to see bro moments between him and, Vega. So, it was nice to have him there. I really liked the Citadel trip that you get to take with him, and you go sniping and after throwing cans. Like, that was a fun little scene. However, I also felt Garrus was really depressing in this game. But not... Like, there were still moments of humor, but it wasn't quite up to what I'd seen in the previous games. So, like, there was a little bit missing there in Mass Effect 3 that was there in the first 2, and that I kind of wish was here in the 3rd game. But at the same time, there's a lot that's happening in the 3rd game, and it does make sense. The other thing, because I obviously got a lot of people questioning why I didn't use him more often, and it's because I do prefer a more balanced team. And since I was playing an infiltrator, Garrus also being an infiltrator wasn't as helpful to me. He was a more tanky infiltrator, but in some ways it made him less effective to me for how I wanted to balance my team. I have since started a second playthrough, and I'm playing a completely different class, and yeah, he'd probably fit on that team a lot better. I haven't gotten to the point where I've recruited him yet, but, like, that's something that I am working on, because, yeah, I do want to see these missions with the different characters involved. It means I need to restructure who my original character is. And again, that's because of how I like to play. And I'm fully aware that I could go like 100% down one path and I don't have to create the balance that I attempt to. But it's a personal preference on my end. Alright. So, teammate number 4, Edie. Also, kind of... So before I comment on the character, I didn't take her on a lot of missions, and in fact the game kind of called me out for it. But it's because, again, she kind of has that infiltrator aspect, but more of like a rogue type infiltrator versus a warrior type infiltrator, as Garrus was. And so, also, regarding Edie. So, Edie's character, I I really do like, and I actually love her sense of humor. And I think that as a character, Edie was done really, really well. At the same time, putting Edie in a robot body, it's a fun idea, but I guess for me it wasn't quite so effective for me in this first playthrough. But it's a good idea. I just, I would have rather have had a different type of companion, because Edie was almost more of a cross between Garrus and Tali, and it was a little too much, I guess, on that end for me. But overall, still really love Edie. I loved having conversations with her. I loved her teasing the hell out of Sam at the party, and Tali's trying to poison herself so she can escape the awkwardness. And so, anyways, really, really do actually like her. Just, I don't know if she was a great squad mate to throw in. Now, having her as a crew member, I might think differently, and that's like personal preference on my part. So, fifth member who joined my team was from the DLC, Javik, and I really appreciated him. And one of you pointed out that Javik is kind of a representation of what would have happened, or what would happen if Shepard failed. And I think Javik is a really good addition to the story and to the plot, and like, especially with the mission on Thessia, where it's just like, oh my gosh, he contributes so much to the lore here, that it's really amazing. Also, hungover Javik is hilarious, and I like the fact that he kind of has a little itty bitty teeny tiny crush on Liara. Alright, so our sixth member of the squad is Caden, who obviously, I really like. I like taking him on missions. Some of that is because this time I was romancing him, and I like having my romance partner on missions with me. Again, personal preference on my part. At the same time, I think I found some uses for him that a lot of people tend to just blow by. He's a little beefier than Liara is, and his skill set is also a little bit different, so he doesn't have quite as much biotics. But oh my god, Reeve is probably my favorite biotic ability, and he had it. So, and honestly, Reeve really helped dealing with Banshees so much. And as far as his character, I love the fact that you are still getting to see, like, his full story, where he was in Mass Effect 1, to where, like, his relationship with Shepard there, to Mass Effect 2, where he was angry, and really not sure what to think, to now where he's trying to reconcile everything that happened previously and realize what's actually going on. I think he does a really good job with that, but he also stands up for his convictions and what he believes in, and that's been really, really consistent throughout the game, or out the series, actually. And to me, like, one of the things I really liked about Caden was the fact that he's the calm in the storm. And I think his character was really well done. I'm going to talk about romance stuff a little bit later, so that's why I'm not diving into that right now. But I really, really appreciated having Caden in Mass Effect 3. I am, like I mentioned before, I'm doing a second playthrough. The second playthrough is currently in Mass Effect 2. And I've got it at the point where it's Ashley who survived rather than Caden, so that way I can see her in Mass Effect 3 as well, beyond my test footage anyways. And so I'm really excited to see where that goes, but at the same time, I think Caden was a really good option to have in my first playthrough. And finally, probably the squad mate y'all have been desperately waiting for me to comment on, and that is my bestie, Tali. Oh my gosh. Tali is... I love her. I love her so much. I love the fact that you get this full circle story with her, because you met her when she was on her pilgrimage and, like, transitioning into becoming an adult to being an adult and, like, kind of being a badass amongst Lacorians, to becoming an admiral, even as, like, much as that was more of a formality, but at the same time, like, she did become an admiral for the third game, and, like, we got to reclaim Rannoch with her, and that's just, it's so, so powerful. I find Tali's friendship of all of the friendships in the game, I find hers to be the most powerful. And it is why I consider her my favorite character in the series. And just, there's so much character growth for her. And yeah, my second playthrough may be a Tali romance, because I appreciate her so much. And who knows, maybe playing as male Shep, I may actually gain a better appreciation for Garrus. Because, actually, to go back to Garrus real quick, I do feel like it was hindered a little bit. Like, my appreciation for him was hindered a little bit, in that you couldn't go a friendship route with him as Fem Shep. There was, like, a certain point at which there was a hang-up. That was really prevalent in Mass Effect 2. And it's just like, isn't there a way that we can be friends about this, but, like, still joke and stuff? I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but, anyways. So, that is the squad mates. Alright, so, however, as we well know, a lot of the reoccurring characters, it's not just the squad mates, it's also the crew members. And again, I kind of mentioned I would have probably rather seen Edie on like the crew member set versus as a squad mate, but personal opinion, I'm happy with how things turned out. Anyways, so I'm gonna start with Cortez. And I thought, like, Cortez, like, his role as being the driver, more or less, because Joker obviously pilots the ship, but there's always been, I think, kind of a massive joke that Shepard is only bad at two things, dancing and driving, and having her drive in the Mako in Mass Effect 1, in the Hammerhead in Mass Effect 2, the fact that now in Mass Effect 3, they've just put in a driver. I thought that was rather amusing. And I really liked Cortez's story. getting to hear about how he felt regarding the aspects of what happened on Ferris Fields in Mass Effect 2, regarding how he was coping with the loss of his husband, and how, like, he grew from that in this game, and how Shepard helped him do that. I thought he was a really, really good crewmate, and I kind of wish some of our other crewmates had gotten the same treatment that he did, but at the same time, I was really, really happy to have him there. So, next up, I'm going to talk about engineering crew. So, Adams, Daniels, and Donnelly. I'm just combining them all together because generally you saw them together. Daniels and Donnelly, their banter is probably one of my favorite things that occurred in Mass Effect 2, and I'm really glad that they brought that in to Mass Effect 3, and how they've had that blossom and become their relationship throughout the game. And then Adams, it was kind of nice to have him back, but like definitely seeing his full growth, and like talking with him about his struggle of not wanting to work with Cerberus but feeling guilt over not helping Shepard. Like, I think that was a moment that was really humanizing for him. And also all of the interactions that he has with Chakwas. I loved that so much. It was just he like enhanced those moments with characters that I already really loved. So I am happy that he was here. So overall, engineering crew, I kind of wish there was a bit more, but at the same time, I know you only want the game to get so large before it just feels ultimately really ridiculous. So, and since I've already mentioned her, Chakwas, oh my god. I still really love Chakwas. I loved her in Mass Effect 1, loved her in Mass Effect 2, and my god, Mass Effect 3, I'm ecstatic to just continue to have her in this game. And I desperately, desperately wish for more with her across all 3 games. So if any of you know a mod that does that, let me know. Yeah. Chakwas is just amazing. So then we have our human resources specialist, as I'll refer to her, Sam Trainer, which I loved her, like the humor that she contributed to this game. And it was different from the other types of humor that occurred because she's the one that wasn't really supposed to be fighting and wasn't supposed to ultimately be in the middle of the war. She's supposed to be somewhat more on the sidelines, and she's kind of just picked up and run with this as best she can, and I think she's really awesome for being able to do that. And Edie even comments on how Sam's her contribution has been really useful. So I was really glad to have her. I will almost definitely, in a later playthrough of Mass Effect 3, romance Samantha, just because I think that'd be fun. So finally, the crewmate that really does it all, Joker. And holy shit, in this game, his character growth is amazing. It's like, you started to see it kind of at the end of Mass Effect 2, And then I really think in Mass Effect 3, Joker comes into its own in the best way possible. And it's so great to see that. And bless you, Seth Green, for doing such a wonderful job. But, like, I also appreciate that he has been a very consistent character and another one of those friends of Shepard who, like, he rags on Shepard sometimes, he, like, provides comfort at times, badly, but does. I think Joker's a great character. I was really glad that there weren't any issues for him coming back to the Alliance. Well, I guess there were, but, like, I'm glad Edie made it work out. And just, it was so nice to get to see his full story, his full character growth, across this whole thing. Alright, so I'm gonna briefly talk about the DLC and my thoughts on them. So, from the Ashes, I've kind of already mentioned this, really loved having Javik on this whole story, for as long as I did at least. Now the actual mission to get Javik, was that a little annoying? Sure. At the same time, really, really, really glad that, like, his character, like, that DLC, it was about his character. And, like, putting his character in the game, and I was really, really glad to have him. So, on to the more isolated DLCs. Omega. I appreciated the plot on Omega. The whole, we need to recapture it, take it back from Cerberus. I did think that it had a little bit of a contribution, but, I mean, it probably also had one of my favorite characters, and that is Nyreen. I kind of wish I had Nyreen on my squad way more regularly and beyond just the Omega DLC, and I hate the fact that she's supposedly dead, but no body, no proof. And so I'm just so happy about having gotten to see Nyreen and, like, see her interaction, and yeah. She is what made me enjoy the Omega DLC the most. Leviathan DLC is such a lore dump. And I do really appreciate the lore. All the fighting around the lore, do I care about so much? No. At times it was obnoxious. But at the same time, yeah, I know, it's part of the game. And I was really, really, really happy to have that lore and know that information, especially going into those final moments in the game. And so, the fourth DLC I'm talking about is the Citadel DLC, which, wow, that was a lot of fun. I really legitimately enjoyed the Citadel DLC, but it had absolutely nothing to do with the rest of Mass Effect 3 to me. Other than just kind of being a break from it. Whereas the others kind of had their points to weave in. The Citadel, if you think about it from a plot perspective, was more of an interrupt than anything else. But at the same time, it was a ton of fun. I know why people really enjoy it. I did really enjoy the Citadel DLC, so as much as I'm, like, ragging on the fact that plot-wise it's weird, still had a ton of fun. Alright, so some brief thoughts regarding the ending of Mass Effect 3. I'm actually okay with the ending. And I know that I got actually a relatively good ending, all things considered. I've already mentioned, yeah, sure, I did not like Anderson dying. But the only other thing regarding the ending that I felt weird about was the fact that the catalyst looked like the kid who was killed at the beginning of the game. Like, that, to me, makes no sense at all whatsoever. And I have talked with one of my friends, and she's explained to me the indoctrination theory that is Mass Effect 3, and it's like, yeah, okay, sure. But yeah, it was one of those where I kind of wish the Catalyst had been represented differently. Like, I almost wish the Catalyst had taken on Shepard's form instead. I think that could have also worked really well. At the same time, regarding the Catalyst, I did like what they did for the Catalyst's voice, in that they did layer the kid's voice with Jennifer Hale's voice and Mark Mear's voice. And so that it was all three. And I think that was really well done, and a good way to interpret probably the way Shepard would see the Catalyst and, like, interpret it in her head. And who knows, maybe that's why the Catalyst also looks like the kid. But I obviously, like, talked a while in making the final decision, and I just kind of wanted to sum up again why I chose what I chose. And, like, I made my choice because that was the promise made to Anderson, is that we would destroy the Reapers. And, like, that's why I went through with that. Also, I didn't think synthesis would actually provide the desired outcome that would have made Anderson and Shepard both happy, which is why I didn't choose it. Also, I'm like, the AI could be reprogrammed. It's not like everyone's wiped out the knowledge of how to program an AI. So, yeah. That's why I did choose the choices that I made, along with several of the other things that I talked about in the video itself. Alright, so regarding the whole series, 10 out of 10, would play again. And obviously, as I've already mentioned a couple of times now, I am currently replaying Mass Effect 2 as a Sentinel, and I'm going to carry that playthrough into Mass Effect 3. I have not replayed Mass Effect 1, but I use the Genesis DLC for Mass Effect 2 to make some of the choices that I probably would not be able to make playing Mass Effect 1. Like, I sincerely don't think I could ever, actually kill Rex on Biermeyer. But at the same time, like, I do want to see the consequences of what happens if Rex isn't around. But I don't want to be the one to actually have to pull the trigger, so to speak. But the whole Mass Effect series, it's a great story. I can see why it's a well-beloved series. And, I've obviously talked about this a fair amount regarding each individual game, and I think overall, as a whole, as a combined series, it's really, really well done. Alright, so let me talk about the romances real quick. And I know I've answered some of these things in comments before, but I wanted to address them a little bit more. Because some of you haven't cared, and I appreciate that. Some of you have been like, why didn't you romance Garrus as Fenshep? And like, I just kind of want to briefly talk about that. So first of all, just so that way it's clear, it's not just people in the comments who I've heard this from. One of my friends who I was talking to about this series, when he asked me, so who did you romance? Remember, there are only 3 correct choices. To him, the 3 correct choices are Liara, Garrus, and Tali. Which, you know, I think there's a huge chunk of people who do agree with that sentiment, but at the same time, I do think that's bullshit. Whoever you're attracted to and want to pursue a romance with, that's a correct choice. So, regarding those 3 choices, I'll start with Garrus. I don't find Garrus attractive. I'm not romantically attracted to his personality. And it's unfortunate because a lot of my friends were like, oh my god, you're gonna love Garrus so much, and he's gonna be amazing. And I didn't have that same level of appreciation, and I felt like he was almost overhyped, and that made the fact that I wasn't attracted to him, like, it made me feel really bad about that. But at the same time, I'm like, this is me. And I think, especially in the first 2 games, he's way too reckless. And then by the 3rd game, like, he's lost the recklessness and now he's way too sober. And really depressing about it. So it was just one of those where I don't find Garrus attractive. I'm still going to probably do a playthrough at some point where I romance Garrus, just for the sake of doing it. But understand that, you know, I didn't pick him because I don't find him attractive, and I don't think it needs to be a requirement that you pick a specific person to romance for your first playthrough because they're the quote-unquote best romance. Liara, I also didn't find attractive, and it's like the same reason why I don't find Meryl attractive in Dragon Age 2. And that is the archetype of the ancient innocent. I don't like that archetype. It feels awkward to me. And again, personal preference on my part. And Tali. I probably almost absolutely would have romanced Tali. Except I was playing Femshep and I wasn't allowed. Without mods. And even then, I actually don't know if those mods exist, and I wanted to try the games without mods for my first playthrough. Why I did settle on Caden's romance versus not romancing anyone, it is because in Mass Effect 1, I actually genuinely enjoyed his romance. And my original plan, because the only spoiler I had for this entire series, was that either Caden or Ashley would die on Virmire. My original plan was to start the romance with Caden and kill him on Virmire. That was the plan. But I actually enjoyed his character and his romance a lot that I decided to keep playing it. And also his voice actor, whose name is escaping me right now, I loved the fact that for Mass Effect 2, even though Caden had such a small role there, he went off and actually recorded himself reading the letter that Caden writes to Shepard. And I think that's really, really powerful. And really neat that he did do that. And it does contribute a lot to Caden's character. And then finally, in Mass Effect 3, I still really enjoy Caden's romance. Like, those moments are really well done. So that's why I went through with it. Now, that being said, I have like semi already replayed Mass Effect 2 once, but only halfway. In that I started it after the collector base based upon the save files that I already had, and then went from there because I didn't want to do the collector base again. And when I did that half playthrough, I romanced Thane, and I really enjoyed Thane's romance. And it sucks that Thane was, I guess, kind of forgotten about, in terms of, like, say, compared to Miranda or Jack. And instead, you have to deal with his death. And at the same time, like, his death was one of the ones that BioWare promised from the moment you met him. But I really, really enjoyed Thane's romance, and I'm glad I did that on my own time. And again, just to reiterate why in my playthrough, even though I have gone back and romanced Thane, I didn't choose to romance anyone in Mass Effect 2 in the playthrough that I did for this channel, because I felt like it didn't fit Shepard. Shepard, as we all know, is hugely loyal to their team, to Anderson, and that I think would translate into a romantic relationship as well. And even though there's technically 2 years between Mass Effect 1 and the bulk of Mass Effect 2, for Shepard, that really only happens in an instant. And I can't... I don't think that, like, it... How do I say this? Like, I really don't think Shepard would have moved on that quickly because of the need to be loyal. Also, a lot of characters in Mass Effect 2 had daddy issues. That needs to get addressed. But yeah, so that's my opinion regarding the romances. Alright, so finally, what's going to happen with me in Mass Effect? I've already mentioned in my update video, a little over a month ago now, that I will be playing Mass Effect Andromeda for the channel, but I'm giving myself some time between the trilogy and Andromeda, so that way I can see Andromeda for itself and not just constantly compare it. I will almost definitely revisit the trilogy on this channel. Potentially, if I do decide to take up streaming, it might pop up there. And if I don't decide to take up streaming, it could be that a couple of years down the line, I decide I'm gonna go through and do a Renegade run. Cause yeah, I was very Paragon Shep in this game, and with a few moments of Renegade, but yeah, I'm curious enough about what would happen if I just took the Renegade option on everything. So that may happen. Finally, my N7 day specials are going to continue to happen. for as long as I'm running this channel. I really enjoy doing them. I have multiple ideas for in 7-day specials, so yeah, I at least can do it for a few more years, and I'll probably almost definitely come up with even more ideas after that. So yeah, Mass Effect is obviously one of those that I really enjoyed. I know y'all have really enjoyed it. And I want to thank you all for joining me on this journey of experiencing Mass Effect for the first time, in my case. And I know several of you kind of got to feel nostalgia of experiencing it for the first time yourself. And I know that's why I play blind Let's Plays, or why I watch them, is because it does take you back to that original moment of playing it for the first time. And that's hard to recreate on new playthroughs. So, thank you all for tuning in to this somewhat long video. But I hope I answered most of the questions for you that you may have had regarding my thoughts. And also, yeah, just kind of getting to sum up my opinions on it. I know there's a huge valley of opinions regarding everything. But thank you again, and in the meantime, in between time, take care, have fun, and happy trails.